Plugged in. There we are. We're live. How you doing, Cindy?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just want to make sure I'm plugged in. Last week, I was plugged into a power supply that wasn't turned on. Halfway through, my computer just started dying on me. So, welcome to Man in the Grill, episode 13. Ooh,
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So this is episode 13, Man in the Grill, sponsored by Dream Lane Real Estate, Remax Preferred. My lunchtime chat where we talk about anything. Today's anything is Alzheimer's, something that affects us all. Alzheimer's and dementia. We probably could go down a Parkinson's road if we wanted to as well, but I'll save that one for a different episode since that is a muscle ailment as opposed to a mental ailment. But I am very pleased to have a blast from the past. This is another one of those reasons, and I think this is a common theme in my episodes, why you don't burn bridges, right? I met Cindy years ago, and I kind of had forgotten because it was brief, right? It was a professional interaction. I was on Jenny Swain's team. It was Alejandra and I and Colin were on her team at that time, and Cindy and her husband were looking at building a house.
Significant other partner.
We're looking at building a house, and that was my first. Actually, it was 6 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. That was my first with radio, and I know you did a lot of work with Alejandra after that. So fast forward a couple of years, and here we are doing this the Zoom speed networking thing, and I got put in a random room with Dawn Maloney and Cindy, and we were talking, and she's like, "I know you," and "Oh my God, I remember you," and we blasted up. It's awesome. So, what I had her on, or what I asked her to be a guest on today, was to talk about what she has going on in her life, and I think it's pretty inspirational. I think it's pretty cool, especially when it comes to this disease. So, Cindy, why don't you just introduce yourself, what you do for a living, your background, and how we got to talking about Alzheimer's with you today.
Well, I'm Cindy Strom, as Lane said, and I am a registered nurse here in Madison at a local hospital, and I am also a certified life coach. I was inspired to start a business, though, having to do with help for families that have loved ones with Alzheimer's or dementia. And the reason I decided to start this business is because my mom is in memory care currently with Alzheimer's. And our journey on that path was a little rocky. And I'm building the business that I wish I had, the help that I wish I had at the time. So I can go deeper into that if you want.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a great point. And that was, we on this show, sometimes we'll highlight businesses, right? I generally love small businesses. I love keeping our money local and Black and women owned and all the good stuff, right? All the good feel subjects. This one's particularly interesting because it's a thing that I've seen personally. I think everyone can probably relate to that, right? My grandmother-in-law just went through this before she passed away last year. She was in her mid-90s. And there was definitely, as you look back and think about it towards the end heavily, but as you look back up to it, there were signs leading up to it, right? She by no means was as bad as some. We all know Lynn Holly really well, and her experience with Bill and the experience I've gained from that. And, God bless her for sharing that journey with us, because that was one of the coolest things about working at Keller at the time was the whole office got trained, Alzheimer's and dementia training, got certified, where we basically had a class and learned what to do. And the big thing there was, I took out of that was, even though you're selling a property that might be owned by a person who's suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, make sure you still try to make them part of the conversation. Make sure they're still involved, right? And that'll kind of go into your brain health thing that you're going to probably talk about a little bit later. But, you'd mentioned your mother went through it. Can you describe that experience a little bit? Because I've seen it.
Right.
But I'd love to hear, how it affected you and why you jumped to this, right? Like missing, etc. Give me a little back on that.
Yeah. So, my mom was having some episodes of confusion along the way in life, but it was particularly around more stressful situations, and then they would subside and we kind of forget about it and we go on, and it came to a point where she started rapidly declining. Her memory just wasn't what it was. She was getting confused to the point where she wasn't recognizing people. so we were going through that, and it had gotten to the point where we weren't leaving her alone. So either dad was with her, he was her primary caregiver, or I was there.
Dad, real quick.
Hmm?
How old's your father?
Well, let's see. He's 77 now.
How old's your mom at the time?
Oh, so at the time she was 70 and he was 75. So
yeah, that's a stressful point on him as well, right? That's one of the things I've noticed.
Yeah.
About not to interrupt you, keep your mind thought, but one of the things I've noticed is that whenever it happens, it's generally two older aging individuals that have to take, one of them has to take care of the other.
Right.
Not prepared, doesn't have the strength, the willingness to.
Right. Right. So in that process, I was watching my dad's health decline as well, from the stress of that and that 24/7 job of being the caregiver. And so it did get to the point where one day she ran out the door thinking she had to get back to her parents. It was the middle of winter. Dad called me in a panic, and fortunately I was able to come on over, and she hadn't recognized him at the time, thought he was an intruder in the house, and became combative. And so we were really at a crisis point there. We ended up going to the ER that night. Mom got admitted to the hospital, and she never came home. And so,
she had dementia at that time?
In that time, we didn't have a diagnosis. So there were several difficult things about that. She didn't have a healthcare power of attorney in place as far as beyond my dad.
Right.
So healthcare providers that wanted to talk to me or reach me on the phone weren't able to legally talk to me. So we had to get that in place, and that took some doing. And then we had to get her diagnosed. And basically what the healthcare team wants to do is rule out anything else that this can possibly be.
Right.
Right down to the possibility of it being a UTI and causing confusion in an older person. And so that took some time. And then when we got the diagnosis, they would not discharge her without a safe plan in place. And so, we had to really hustle to try to figure out what that was going to be and then get it in place.
Right.
And so we weren't going to turn my parents' condo into a memory care facility.
And when you say, one second, when you say a plan, they won't release her till there's a plan in place. What does that plan even look like?
Right. Memory care, basically. So a safe plan would be either turning the home into a memory care kind of safe facility or going to a memory care facility to live.
Gotcha. On the fly, by the way.
On the fly.
I'm in the hospital until I convert the entire house to a memory care facility. Okay.
Right. And hire caregivers and piece that all together.
Right.
And so, so we decided, and these weren't decisions that we took lightly, and it was an arduous process, and it was heartbreaking to make these decisions, but we decided ultimately that memory care was the route that we were going to go. But we had to go to court and get a guardianship in place. We had to find a facility that we were willing to leave my mom, my dad's wife,
right,
in. And so that whole process took a long time, and she was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And so we're running to the hospital every day. That was hard for them to manage as well, as she's on a floor with, med-surg patients and needing a sitter and things like that. But that's not always possible. And so, the whole thing was very difficult. And the help that I needed wasn't just within arm's reach. It was hard to find. The hospital social workers are wonderful and they're empathetic, but they gave me a lot of information to sift through by myself. And the businesses that I ended up reaching out for help felt transactional. It wasn't ultimately helpful. The empathy factor wasn't there. As we're trying to navigate this in the midst of our grief and stress and mom's growing angst in the hospital. We ultimately did find a place that I love where mom is. And I'm super confident in the care that she's receiving there. And so it turned out well, but in the process of navigating this, you find a range of quality from good to quite bad. And so I was hitting a wall as a healthcare professional myself. I was thinking it would be easier for me to navigate this, and it was hard. And so I was able to reach out to a friend who's in the industry, and she gave me some good advice. I just said, "Tell me what to do because I'm hitting a wall."
Right.
And so ultimately, that's how we found the place where Mom is now. But as the dust was settling on all that, I just felt. I was shaking my head. I felt scared. What was going to happen to me? What was going to happen to my brain health as somebody who's the daughter of, a person with Alzheimer's disease? And how could we have done this better? Reflections on that. And so I just came up with the idea to start a business that would walk shoulder to shoulder with family members that are trying to navigate this. So me.
Family member.
The ideal client, 2 years ago.
It's perfect. Did you run into a lot of people that had the same story, same experience?
I have since then. At the time, no. So that's one of the things that I'm wanting to build into my business as well, is a support group that will connect you with people that are going through this at the same time.
Yeah, almost like Alcoholics Anonymous. We didn't even talk about that when we prepped for this, but yeah, that's a great point, right?
Yeah. So you have somebody to talk to, somebody to bounce your feelings off of, somebody to, who knows what you're feeling and going through at that time.
Right. That could almost be a business by itself. just organizing that, right? Well, that's awesome. I mean, not awesome. It's a great story, great ending. And I asked you that question earlier, if you've ran other people, because I've heard that story a lot, right? My family went through it, different age levels. That's what I kind of find interesting is, people live longer these days.
Yes.
And so in my particular situation, the grandmother was being handled by my wife's mother, my kid's grandmother, right?
Yeah.
They're in their 70s. So they're in their 70s going through the same situation you're going through with a lady who's in her 90s. And just that dynamic too, right? Like, whoa. Not that they're very active. I mean, again, we're all living longer, very active 70-year-olds, but I mean, it's not what they envisioned. I'm pretty sure it's not what any of us ever envisioned doing, right? With their dementia, having parents.
I think the fear factor comes in there too, and people want to try to hide it. And
you think, really?
I think my mom was very afraid of what the future looked like for her. She was afraid that she was losing her mind, that people would think that she was just crazy, just didn't have a good understanding of what was happening to her, and was afraid to reach out and get the information.
Right.
And so I think she hid it for longer than we knew it was going on.
When you say she hid it, did you guys just not see it either? Or looking back, do you think you could have? Let me ask it this way.
It's a good
Going
question.
forward, since you got a business, what would you recommend people if they see something, if they do something, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that we did see a lot of things and we just didn't know what to call them.
Sure.
So these intermittent periods of confusion, they were usually during times of stress, whether that was good stress or bad stress. It could be like during the holidays and trying to plan for a big family gathering. Well, that's stressful. You're looking forward to it, but it's still stressful. And she would get confused during those times. Not profoundly confused, but, there were things that you just kind of be like.
For game, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say perhaps if you're noticing that in your family member, it may not be nothing. Now, it may be, but wouldn't you rather have the information if it was?
Totally.
Get evaluated sooner rather than later is what I would say.
Right. Because, one of the things we wanted to kind of touch on as well, the ripple effect, right? If you don't get it evaluated and you kind of let it go, what could happen? What's the things you're trying to prevent with your business from a family standpoint?
It's just a matter of being prepared. So the more information that you can get, the more prepared you can be. So you're not doing this on the fly. Right. So you're not having to make these decisions that are crucial, life-changing decisions for your family in these periods of duress. So you can be prepared in advance to go through this and go through it more smoothly.
Sure. What's the first thing you tell someone to get prepared with? I know what I want you to say, but I'll see what you say.
What's going to be the plan for a living arrangement? Yeah. So what is that going to look like if this person can no longer take care of themselves? if they're a danger to themselves or to others.
Right.
How is that plan going to look for you? Would you rather have them stay in the home? Do you want to, put together a care plan in the home? Are they going to go to memory care? Is it just going to be a matter of both individuals, the husband and the wife going to assisted living and being able to progress through the system as needed there? So really just have those hard conversations, have those conversations with your whole family of what your wishes are and, what you think this is going to look like, what you can afford, how assets might need to be divided. Those are all things that it's better to be prepared in advance for.
And so basically what you're describing is kind of like another estate, right? Or an asterisk on your estate or trust.
Mm-hmm.
Given that said, and I know you know as many estate people now as probably I do, right? How do you include that? Like, because that's the biggest surprise for me is just the amount of money it costs to take care of a person at memory care.
It is staggering.
Yeah.
And most people can't just come up with that. So
Right.
If you have to do this on the fly, what we ended up doing was dividing assets and getting a guardianship in place for mom. And so, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat.
No worries.
But, it worked out. Fortunately, my parents planned well. They're not independently wealthy, but they were able to divide the assets and cover the costs for a period of time. And my dad can still, maintain his standard of living as well. But what you ideally would want to do is go to an estate planner.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we're building into the business too, is having those resources that we can pull in for families. So after your initial evaluation, we have a discovery call. We see what the current situation is, what the needs are, what your wishes are, and then pull in resources as needed. And we come up with a very personalized plan for clients. So if you need an attorney, you need an estate planner, a CPA, whether you need help in the home, we're building out a network that, we can pull in those resources as needed.
Sure. And it's because it's a different scenario too, right? Because on a scale of 1 to 10, Alzheimer's completely, I don't want to say completely, remembers nothing. 10 to 1, like you said, is off your game a little bit.
Yeah.
You'll plan accordingly. Yeah. Is it safe to say, if you have Alzheimer's and you get to the 1, that you're eventually going to get to the 10 somewhere down the road, or is it you could just hit a 2 or 3 and stay there for that, foreseeable future? How's it? Correct? Or educate me a little bit.
As far as I know, there's no cure for Alzheimer's.
Right.
So it is a disease that will progress. It's a neurodegenerative disease that will progress.
The key word there is degenerative. So it's going to get. So even better, plan early, because you're going to get to that 10 section sooner or later, right?
Right. And plan when that person can still articulate their wishes.
Yeah. That's tough, though. If you've ever taken keys, having those conversations with that generation is difficult, right? They keep everything tight to their chest. Actually, that's a great question right there, right? Knowing that generation, because that's where they are, right? Boomers.
Right.
They keep their cards close to their chest, right? A lot of times when I'm in dealings with mature couples, the female very seldom never knows how much money or where the money goes or how it works. With the male. And that's the situation I'm kind of speaking of specifically, is the male went through Alzheimer's first, or caught the disease first. Female had no clue where how to pay for it or anything, and the kids were away. So, again, selfishly, I just wanted to list a house.
That might be necessary.
What?
That might be necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. But before we got to that point, to listing a house, we had to get her kids involved more than they wanted to get involved, and help her make decisions and find the money. And if you've ever, we did this from a mother, just found a place for a maturing adult to live on a fixed income. It can be a challenge. That's why the numbers of memory care are just out. Wow. Holy moly, right? So I think I lost my train of thought there, but
Well, and there's resources out there too that I think that people aren't necessarily aware of. For example, here in Dane County, we have ADRC. So, they can definitely help with that kind of planning and where to find funds, how to organize resources. That was one resource that my family used too.
which is what?
ADRC.
ADRC, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're saying, okay, I see what you're saying. Sorry. I was trying to find it online to tag it. I lost my train of thought. But ADRC is a middle ground place that helps you find resources.
Yep. And it helps you organize your assets in a way that's going to be most beneficial in that situation.
They're very asset based. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's funny because my wife and I did a trust last year, and that was as we get older, right? Mm-hmm. As generations come down, we learn more. Every generation learns a little more from the generation before. Not just learning good things, but learning things you don't want to do.
Right. Exactly right.
And in my business, I've seen enough mature people pass away with no plan for an estate. And I've seen things go to probate, and probate never ends well for anyone except probate. Right? So my wife and I went through the effort, and we created a trust and got a place for our kids and put the accounts and our investment properties under it, et cetera, et cetera. First step. But going through that process, like you said, was kind of funny. At our age, the thing that was most challenging is what we do with our kids, right?
Right.
But what we're talking about is well past that, and it's still just as important. It's your wishes, how you want the rest of your life in case X, Y, or Z happens, right?
Right. I mean, this does certainly apply to any stage in life. The more prepared that you can be, the better, obviously. And you're talking about, the stage where you have young kids now, but at every stage of life, this is a way to express your wishes in case the worst thing happens. If there's a worst case scenario, you're prepared.
Well, the big thing too, right? What we found from that process is now our kids, and they're 13 and 10, but we had to explain, my parents never explained this to us. Maybe your parents never did to you either, but what happens when I die? There was just a talk of it, right? Like, my mom.
We were well into adulthood when that conversation came up.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. My mom got control of everything, and she, again, that generation, right? Oh my God, the locks are off. Bought umbrellas and just, horrible spending of money because she wasn't educated on it, right? She didn't know what to do. And when my dad died, because he was, firm grip on everything, all of a sudden she just went crazy. So now maybe even a situation is part of this conversation, right? We've got to come up with an alternative plan to fund the rest of her life, my sister and I. Yeah. And we've been actively doing this, not a problem. I'm just saying, if she had been educated better, or we had the conversations, and it's hard because they don't listen to us, right? Yeah. Their parents are smarter than us, but seeing other situations, it would have been a lot easier to kind of help her get prepared or help her have those tough conversations. You're going to get older, no way around about it, right? Like, how are you going to live in the future? And I'm just blessed that where we are, and I hope our kids, by having that conversation with us and us starting to trust and walking us through this, and this is what happens if we die, and this is who takes care of you, and this is where the money goes, etc. I hope they're a little better off as they, start thinking about that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we've already determined that there is no cure for Alzheimer's. That's a known fact. What can we do, or is there anything you can do to help prevent Alzheimer's or dementia?
Right. So here's the other message that I am determined to weave into the business that I'm building here too, is that there is a lot more than you think that you can do as far as your lifestyle choices to determine your future. So, as somebody who is the daughter of somebody with Alzheimer's, I was worried what was going to happen to my brain,
right?
How I was going to age, what my longevity looked like. And so I started gaining as much information as I could, reading books, and there's a surprising amount of information out there. I think that maybe it's just not getting into the hands of people, or maybe, there's a specific circle of people, or, I don't know, type of person is getting in the hands of, somebody who's actually interested in healthcare and aging and things like that. But I don't know that this information is necessarily reaching the masses. But the good news is, the lifestyle choices that you make. So the food you eat, how much exercise you get, your interpersonal relationships, purpose in your life, all contribute to aging well.
Sure.
It all contributes to brain health. And so when we look at those things, I mean, there's definitely specific things that you can do to increase your longevity, to make sure that you have a better quality of life all your life. And I'm anxious to educate my clients on that too.
What are some of those things? Would you mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah. Cutting out processed foods in your diet and sugar. Two huge things. Two of the biggest things as far as diet is.
It's a no-brainer, period, just for health. Right? Health, right? Like
all the things that we've heard for how long now? It all contributes to your brain health and your vascular health. So when we're talking about heart disease or anything, stroke risk, it's all vascular, and it all contributes to brain health as well.
Right.
So what's exciting about this is, so we can make good choices in our diet, right? More whole foods, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, just cutting out processed carbs, sugar.
Processed anything. Good Lord.
Processed anything in a package.
And again, that's not to interrupt you, but that's generational, right? Like,
right.
That was the greatest thing since sliced bread, Twinkies, and all this processed food that they put in grocery stores in the 50s and 60s. And we grew up on it. My dad is a retired employee from a meat company, Eckrich Meats. I literally grew up on hot dogs, and bologna. Yeah, that's what we grew up on. Then fast forward, like, all right, you know what? Probably wasn't. And they smoked constantly. I never smoked, but we were always around smokers.
Right.
Like cars and truck cabs.
You can smoke anywhere.
Yep. You can smoke it, right? Exactly. How's that going to affect us in the future, right?
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to.
So here's the other thing, though, about diet. You want to cut out the toxins, right? So you want to try to buy organic over non-organic food as well, to get those, those toxins, those herbicides, those pesticides out of your body as well. Exercise, exercising every day is great, but I don't mean like vigorous exercise. Like, you can go for a 20-minute walk outside every day, and that contributes to brain health. Sleep, boy, if you can dial in your sleep and get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night, that's when your brain really cleanses itself. And that's when your memories are stored, your short-term to your long-term. And so sleep is more important than we ever thought. And it is not a badge of honor to, say I'm somebody who can function on 4 hours of sleep a night, because physiologically that's probably not true.
Right. If you can, it's not smart.
Yeah.
I could probably live if I fell out of an airplane too, but I really don't want to try it.
Right.
Well, that's cool. What if anyone out there who's listening to this who has interest in exploring your services, what would the first thing they'd want to do be?
Contact me for a free discovery call, and we'll talk about what's going on in your family, in your situation, or, obviously, even if it's not a family member, it's somebody that you're in charge of the care of. And we'll see what's going on, and then develop a personalized plan for you, pulling in the resources that we need, so you can still keep your life up and running too. Here's the thing, like, you're doing this on the fly, all of a sudden there's a crisis and you have to attend to that. That can be full time. That can take up all your time and energy.
Yeah, totally could eat your self-care.
Your self-care falls by the wayside. I mean, don't even talk to, these people about self-care. Don't even talk to me about self-care. When I was going through that, that's what I was like, what? There's not time for that. So I want to be able
to meet in COVID.
What's that?
Anyone who started this journey in COVID? I'm assuming that had a whole nother layer of complexity as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
very challenging. Yeah.
I don't know if there's time for that, but in the comments below, I've linked your contact information. I've also linked the 2 books that you kind of mentioned that would help you create a lifestyle, or at least start thinking about a lifestyle to make better choices to improve your mental health along the way, long term. really appreciate your time. I really appreciate it. This was good
I
to talk.
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Like I said, we had your business is new. I love promoting it. You're a woman-owned business. That's always awesome, and you got a phenomenal product. Like your medical background and your experience. It's a tough experience. Like I say, it's my big thing is my passion's cancer, fighting cancer, because I hate little kids having cancer, and that's a tough experience, right? When you see that, you are scarred the rest of your life.
You'll never.
You can't unsee that, right?
Yeah.
Same thing when you see and this is particularly interesting, that your best friend, one of your best friend's parents, start suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. And like you said, they were always on point, and they were on this pillar, and then can't remember how to get back home from the garage. You just don't see that, right?
It's devastating to watch somebody go through that.
Yeah, totally. So contact Cindy Strom if this relates to you, if you've got a need. It's a phenomenal idea, and I totally want to support it any way that I can. So thank you so much for your time, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Lane.